Welcome to Soapbox Sessions, the podcast that gets leadership and marketing experts on their soapbox, sharing their passion and advice with no filter. I'm your host, Ashley Laabs, head of content at Composure Digital. We're a boutique agency that offers thought leadership and ghostwriting and LinkedIn coaching to B2B leaders so they can build community and trust with their ideal audience by showing up as an industry expert. Today, I'm with Mariya Delano, the founder of Kalyna Marketing. She's got a marketing agency for B2B technical brands, writing backed up by a great love of research that helps her create high value content for clients in SaaS, cybersecurity, data analytics, and more. And she actually just started as a search engine land contributor. So, congratulations on that, Mariya.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. So glad to have you here today. And
Yeah.
I know that the thing you want to get on your soapbox about is really just a small phrase that is such a big thing in our world, which is so what? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so so what is one of my favorite and least favorite phrases, as I like to say, because it's such a great thing to ask other people and it's very useful, but also the second somebody turns it around on you, you feel very much put on the spot.
It's a sharp knife.
It is. It's a very sharp knife. And no matter how much you teach other people to do it, and no matter how much you practice doing it yourself, when other people ask you, you still feel like, you're being called in a class and you didn't do your homework.
Oh, absolutely. I
Every
think
single
it's
time.
it's everyone's worst nightmare to be like, well, so what? Who are you to tell me this? What does that matter?
Exactly.
I already know this.
Yeah. I often think of it, so what as why should anybody give a crap? Right? Like, why should anybody care about this? Like, why do you think this is worth anybody's time? Which is a very harsh way of phrasing it, but that's kind of the point, right? This is the sharp knife. This is the uncomfortable question. This is facing reality and almost thinking of the worst case scenario in terms of the most skeptical reader, listener, watcher, audience member in general.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so why is this such an important and frequent question in the world of content?
So, to answer that, I need to start somewhere else. I actually learned this as a technique when I was working as a writing tutor in college. I worked as a writing tutor and instructor.
Bless
Um,
you.
yeah, right. In my university's writing center, which meant that people would come in with their essays for their classes, maybe for their thesis. Some people came in with their little PhD papers. Some professors came in. And my job was within an hour to sit down, understand what the heck they were talking about, often on subject matter I knew nothing about, and then help them improve it, right? All within an hour. And we had very strict rules. We couldn't ever tell anybody what to do or
Mm,
even give a suggestion necessarily. We had to make them come up with ideas themselves by asking them guiding questions.
right.
So I would know what I wanted them to say, but I could never say, you should say it that way. I would have to walk them into it with their own thoughts and words by asking questions and pointing things out.
Hmm.
And one of the main questions that we would ask was always, so what? So, I would be reading through somebody's paper and they would be saying something about, I don't know, how colonialism in India shaped the literary tradition in all of Indian novels ever since, right? And I would sit there and say, okay, this is interesting, but so what? Why do we care?
Right.
And in academia, the standards are pretty high because whether you're writing for a class or you're making an academic paper, you're dealing with subjects and topics that a lot of people have written about before, right? If
Hmm.
you're in a class, you probably have 20, 30, 50 other people in that class who are writing on the exact same topic. They have the same assignment. They might be using the exact same books and papers to write their own. And if you're writing something for actual scholarship, you're probably building off of the work of others. So you're kind of trying to carve out this tiny little niche and say something unique, whether it's for a grade to get an A or to get published somewhere. You have to have a unique angle, some unique contribution, something that makes people want to read your work and remember it, even though everybody else is writing on the same topic constantly, every day, right?
Right.
So that question was important because the actual act of standing out was so difficult and the standards were so high. And I see the same thing in content. And I think it's actually easier in content. We have fewer people often writing about the same topics, at least exactly the same way, the exact same specific topics, right?
Hmm.
And we still want to stand out, right? often one of the main things that I see people do is they keep hogging the same general like approaches to things, right? They're like, oh, okay, I'm going to write an SEO article about, I don't know, 10 best project management software for SaaS marketers. And they don't think past that. They just think, I'm going to do that. I'm probably going to copy a bunch of other people. Maybe I'll add one or two other software to the mix that are my own, or maybe the brand I'm promoting. And that's kind of it. And
Yeah,
this kind of mindset shift of what are you contributing? What's actually new here, right? Think like a scholar. Think like you're contributing to a body of scholarship, right? You are basing it on the work of others, but what are you saying that's yours, that's unique, that's worth listening to? And that's where that question
absolutely.
comes in.
That makes me think a lot about something that I talk about with my clients as well. Because you're on the brand side, you're working
Mhm.
with B2B brands.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of individual leaders and executives. And so what comes up a lot, right? Anytime you're
Yeah.
talking about thought leadership, you actually
Oh, yeah.
have to be bringing your own thoughts.
Exactly.
And so much of it, I'd love to challenge you on this idea. It's not even that it needs to be new, but it does need to be valuable.
Mhm.
And I think that when people are thinking about, "Oh, I wanna write this SEO article. Oh, I wanna" right, it starts with "I want," and it's not about what people need. It's not about what their community needs, what they're struggling with, what they're trying to figure out, the bumps in the road that they've experienced. I think that it's the thought leadership is really about giving to people.
It is. Yeah, that's the whole point of being a leader, right?
Yeah.
I I made this really silly meme a few months ago. I showed it initially in a webinar and people really liked it, so I posted it on LinkedIn, and I think it's my third most popular post of all time. And it's a meme of surprised Pikachu, you know that meme format?
Yeah.
And I think the caption says, "Want to be a thought leader? Start by thinking." And then surprised Pikachu being
Oh my god, I know. It's a very simple concept, but I think that thought leadership has become this code. It's like B2B code for "I want attention."
It totally is. It's B2B code for I'm important, so you should listen to me. But
Yeah.
honestly, what people forget, and I'm sure you see this all the time working with individuals, I encountered working with brands, even though there's a little less ego involved because it's multiple people, but still we see it all the time. It's the whole, well, I'm important. I have this title, I have this experience, I've done these things, so people owe me attention, right? On the individual side. And with brands, the way it shapes up often is, well, we have this great product and we have these customers who like us and we made so much money and so much growth. So again, people owe us attention. But nobody owes you attention. I don't care who you are. You can be Seth Godin or something, right? You can be, I don't know, Gary Vee, although I don't like him, but he's popular. And I still don't think anybody owes you attention if you don't have anything to say, if you don't have anything to contribute or add.
Yeah,
It
to them, if you don't have anything
yeah,
to give to them. We
yeah,
all we
or
all
like
care about ourselves.
yeah,
We all care about it. Like, it's a natural instinct, I think,
yeah.
for people to want that attention or feel like at a certain level they've earned it, or that they deserve it. Like, I think that's a pretty human thing. Like, we all wanna be seen, and we all think that we deserve to be seen. We do. But you don't get seen by, like, waving your arms around and telling everyone, "I deserve to be seen. I am important. What I have done is great." Because that's just about you, and being human, being part of any community is about connecting with other people, and you're not doing that if you're making it all about you.
No, and the other thing is, yeah, sure, everybody deserves to be made to feel important and valued, but the thing is, because everybody is important, nobody is, right? Nobody stands out that way. We can all walk around saying, I'm important, I've done cool work, right? You and I can go around in a room full of marketers, and all of us will be saying the same thing. I am important. I've done this and I've done this, and it can become a screaming match on who has the fanciest clients or titles or whatever. But who does that help at the end of the day? That's not
Nobody.
thought leadership.
It doesn't even help you.
No, it doesn't. It's just annoying for everyone involved. We're gonna lose our voices shouting so loud and not get anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's
I
just a
totally
dead
agree with
end.
you.
Yeah.
I think it reminds me of advice that I got, just like life advice. Um, And it was that if you don't know what you're doing, if you can't figure things out, if you feel stuck, if you feel really sad, if you feel lonely, go help someone else.
Yeah.
And it
I
just puts
love that.
things into perspective because, you know, selfishly, you get a lot from helping others because you do feel like you
Ooh,
belong. You feel like you make a difference. You feel like you're important because you made a
yeah.
difference. And
Yeah.
I think of thought leadership the same way. That's like, it's totally understandable whether as a brand or as a leader that you would want to, grow your company by building a reputation for being an expert, but you don't build a reputation for being an expert by saying you're an expert. You have to be an expert, and an expert is someone who has the knowledge to help people and make a difference. And you have to, I think, stop keeping that behind a gate and saying,
Yeah.
well, you can get that if you're my customer, right? You have to build trust and community by giving that expertise now and sharing those thoughts now and creating that value now, um,
Yeah.
by helping
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. And helping other people is so fulfilling, right? One of my favorite results to look for with thought leadership, whether we're doing it for ourselves or for clients, is comments and getting qualitative feedback from people, whether it's emails, comments on something directly, shares with captions, right? People mentioning things and calls, whatever. Because when people say, I read this or I saw this and it helped me, and this is what resonated with me, and this is what it made me think of, or this is what it made me do differently, that is just the best kind of result you could possibly get, right? As marketers, yeah, we're trying to get attention, but the other thing we're trying to do, whether for ourselves or clients, is get people to take action, right? We're hoping that people will remember the person or the brand. We're hoping that they will trust them and eventually, hopefully, in some way give them money, right? Who's down the
Yeah,
line? But you can't get there unless you resonate. Like, you can have all the attention in the world, but if that attention is not leading to trust or repeated, exposure or actually wanting to do something and engage further, it's not useful at all.
absolutely.
And that's what these kinds of questions get at, right? Because you might have a piece that's going to get 1,000 clicks, and that might be on the top page of Google, result number one, all of that. But if you don't ask yourself why this matters, even if people read it, are they going to do anything with it? Are they going to remember you? Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, yeah, I think that great thought leadership comes from a place of, the entire point is to influence.
Yeah.
And you have to influence how someone thinks about a problem. You have to influence the strategies that they're developing to solve that problem. You have to influence the way that they are evaluating those solutions, whether that's like a vendor or a
Yeah.
tool or just a process. Um, and you have to motivate them to action, right?
Yeah.
By influencing and creating change in those ways. But so many of those things, like most of the B2B process now is happening without interaction with a salesperson or
Yeah.
someone at the company, which to me is why your so what question is so relevant because you have to answer it if you want to inspire the kind of change and the kind of action that's actually going to motivate someone to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen people kind of give up on the idea of doing that with content and of doing that kind of at scale, which makes me really sad because you can make a huge difference to people at scale by publishing stuff online, right? You can really move people in so many ways. And I feel like so many companies and so many executives and just entrepreneurs in general kind of reduce the role of content to just being this almost fast food equivalent
Mhm.
intellectually, right? Of like junk food. Of this is something we just have to put out there. We're hoping people like look at it and stuff, but like really we just want them to click on our demo request page or something.
We just want them to
And
put their email into this field so we
yeah,
can start, contacting them in a new
yeah.
way. Yeah.
And you hear these things like these assumptions like, well, nobody's gonna look at it that much anyway, or nobody, like, really reads long blog posts, or nobody watches these videos, or, like, everyone's gonna skim. It's like, why are you already setting out, like, limiting yourself, thinking that this is not gonna make anybody give a crap?
Why do
Why?
you think they do that?
I think it's because they don't know how to approach it almost. I think they're scared to think that it's possible to make that much of a difference, because if you think it's possible, but you fail to do so, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow that it might be your fault in a way, that you might
Totally.
need to think about things differently. Like, that's the problem with people who are experts, right? You're an expert in something, so you think that you need to be good at everything almost. There's like this element of ego to not wanting to look stupid or
Right.
admit that you're doing something wrong, especially when you're sharing your expertise, right? If you're looking at somebody who's been trying, like sincerely, they've been posting on LinkedIn, maybe they've been going, making videos or something, talking about their field, and you come in and tell them, I don't think you're doing it right, essentially. Of course that's gonna hurt. Of course that's gonna sting, right? Your ego's attached to it. You're sharing your expertise. Of course, your ego's attached to that.
Hmm.
It's easier to think it's impossible and blame other people and blame just the system, right? It's a protective mechanism, I think.
I
And it's
think that's
understandable.
that's such an interesting take. It's very psychological,
Hmm.
and I don't think that I'd thought of it that way before. Um, I think I often think about the reluctance to pursue thought leadership as a reluctance to invest in something that is very slow.
Yeah, that too.
Um, the reality for a lot of these B2B companies is that their sales cycle is,
Mm.
years sometimes. And what they want is to cut that in half, right? They
Oh,
just
only in
want it
half? You have very
only
patient
yeah.
clients.
I want them to see our logo, and the next day I want them to do $1 million brand deal. Um,
I have heard that. I'm not like,
no, of course not. And it's like, yeah, me too, right? I would
yeah,
love that.
yeah, right? That'd be
Um,
great.
that would be so great, but it's not the reality.
Yeah,
And the reality is that the B2B sales process has changed so much because of the internet and the
and
digital
the
worlds.
pandemic.
Yeah, and the pandemic.
Yeah,
And it's still slow. And now it's hands off too.
yeah,
And so the investment in content, like great content, is costly.
it
It's
is.
research, it includes experts, it has entire pathways, there are libraries of it. And the entire point is to allow your ideal customer to self service
Yeah.
like 90% of the way through the buying process and then come talk to you.
Content is like self-service trust building.
Yeah, ooh,
Maybe.
love that.
Yeah.
And I think that on one hand, like that's expensive to develop.
Yeah.
And two, it's not always the easiest to measure. It is not as simple as putting together pay-per-click ads and testing the headlines and the
Mm.
imagery and seeing what works and then just putting a ton of money behind it. And you can do that, but a lot of the time the quality of those leads is going to be lower because they're not nurtured,
Yeah.
you know? Um and so I've always felt that the reluctance around a true thought leadership practice is really just a fear of the investment and the time that it takes. But if you build something over time, right, it snowballs and you start to see that impact and it
Yeah.
lifts your reputation. All these things just continue to fall down like dominoes because you made this investment. And I think it's just hard for people to see. It's hard for people to fathom.
It is, and it doesn't help when you have all of these LinkedIn gurus and stuff selling you
Oh,
their course and saying, "Well, here's how I built my following to 10 bazillion people in 2 days sitting on the toilet the whole time. Here's how, I made $5 million in the last 5 seconds by, I don't know, drinking the right kind of coffee. Here's 5 tips on how you can do it too. Step 1, go buy some coffee beans."
yeah.
Right?
If you just have
And
the same 5 a.m. morning routine as I do, you too will become a millionaire.
exactly. Why aren't you a millionaire already? You read this post like 5 minutes ago. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
Buy
absolutely.
the course. Come on.
Oh my God,
Uh,
so
but
painful.
it's used people's perceptions though. Like I've noticed it. I've had clients come in and ask me about those kinds of posts. They'll be like, I've seen this person say this. Why can't we do that? Or do you think that's impossible? Right. And I feel like I'm breaking their hearts sometimes when I tell them it's not possible because it almost builds up this dream, right? Of maybe I could do this cheaply and quickly and build all of this influence and get all of this money. Maybe it's not that hard. Because it
Yeah,
is scary, it is uncertain to have to face that, okay, you want to build this kind of reputation and authority and trust at scale. Well, guess what? You got to strap in for investing money and time and effort and your own like brain and ideas and your soul for months. And
yeah.
nothing's guaranteed. And who knows if it's going to work, right? That's
Well,
scary.
it's scary, but at the same time, it's always pretty hilarious to me when you're talking to a B2B company that like a single contract to them could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, and they're like, "You wanna like, can I pay you like $300 to write this article?"
Yes. Oh my God. Have
And it's
you
just like, boy, the return on investment you're imagining is really incredible.
It is, it really is, right? Have you ever heard of Chris Do from The Future?
Yes, love him.
Have you watched his, like, mock negotiation videos?
I wish that I could be as smooth as he is in those videos. I was like,
God.
how can I make sure that anytime there's an objection in my business that it occurs exactly as it is in this
Yeah,
scenario
right?
so that I can say exactly what you're saying and then my client will feel exactly the way that you're describing and my whole life
Yeah.
will be
I feel like
perfect.
he's a wizard. I feel like he knows
Mhm.
something none of us do,
Well, I mean,
but
he's a human. I really
he
wonder what
is
it's
too.
like to be on a call with him
I
because
really
let's
do.
let's be real. It's
Yeah.
very motivational.
Oh, yeah, of
It's
course.
very motivational and you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna
I wanna
say
do
that."
that. I can
That helps.
totally do this, yeah.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
reality is I think that if you were that confident and that smooth, it would actually be off-putting to some people on the call.
Probably. I think a lot of the actually, yeah, I had this conversation with my husband the other day because we watched one of Christo's videos.
You're just
And
getting amped.
yeah, yeah, we were just talking about it. Like, the core of it is really the confidence and asking questions a certain way and kind of not backing down in a certain manner. But the actual specifics of how he does it are so dependent on your personality. Like, he has a very particular kind of personality. You and I do not have that personality at all. If we tried to copy his mannerisms, it would be extremely off putting. But there's a way to kind of implement that core of it in a way that like matches you, right? Your style of
Yeah.
talking, your way of building relationships, your way of convincing people. But I do think that core is there. And the reason I brought him up is because those videos are one of the best examples I've ever seen of actually showing people the value of marketing work, right? And making them put it in perspective, right? Your average contract value is this. If I got you one client from this work, why do you not think I'm worth at least 10% of that, right?
Mhm.
Do you not want me to get you a client? Like what if you're gonna
Right.
get 100,000, I feel like 10,000 for doing that work is more than fair. Why are you arguing with me over 500? Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is a really big thing for marketers. Um, this is my experience, and I would love to know if it's yours
Yeah.
as well. I think that often when you're at the level of like CMO, VP, director, you're very plugged into the business
Yeah.
and what's going on in the business, what the business needs. You're seeing data about the audience, you're seeing data about performance, but you're not the advocate for the customer, you're the advocate for the business. And so when you are in strategy, when you're in creative execution, a lot of the time you are the invisible customer in the room. You're
Yeah.
advocating for the customer. And so often that creates a lot of tension. And
Yes.
one of the ways I think that tension builds is when there's a lack of transparency about the business to those people who are creating strategy and executing it. So often I know creatives who have spent entire careers without having data about performance of their own work, without understanding how much a customer is worth to the business and therefore like how much is reasonable to spend or not spend on a marketing effort that gets you a customer. And without that context, I think that you can actually set up marketers to fail
Definitely.
because you're not giving them the math to work with. You're just saying that's too much.
You know, here's a way to bring it back. What if we start thinking about so what as a question not only to ask clients when we're doing the creative work and trying to build content, but also as a question to ask to our clients when we're having these kinds of conversations, right? Because as you were talking, and I was remembering, I've had these kinds of conversations with clients all the time too.
Mhm.
When they say something like, well, we need to increase traffic on through this channel, right? Or when they're like, we really need this kind of ROI and we need this kind of increase in sales this quickly, it might honestly be a good idea to turn that around on them and ask, so what? Why?
Yeah.
Why do we care about this? Why is this channel worth investing into? Why is this the kind of budget that you have? Why do you need those gains in that many months, right? What is going to happen? And
Mhm.
sort of starting to tie together like that side of it that they're thinking about, which is the business and why this matters to the business in a particular way and tying it to that business goal, because often that's missing as well,
Mhm.
and tying it back into creative strategy too. Like if they're saying we need to be publishing, I don't know, sorry, I moved my mic. If they say we need to be publishing, I don't know, bottom of the funnel articles about how to use this feature of our tool or something like that, asking them, so what? Why? Why would your customers care about that? Or why would that match your goals and get you those leads or get you those upgrades or whatever you're trying to get? Right? And sort of trying to tie everything together. Because essentially, I mean, I keep asking it in this particular way just because it's easy to remember. But the point of that question is just to dig into why you're trying to make certain decisions, why you're saying certain things, why you're focusing your efforts on a particular topic, on a particular fact, on a particular strategy, channel, whatever it is, right? It's the
Absolutely.
why.
I think that is so true. And it's the difference between a partnership where, for folks like us, your client is either dictating what that partnership looks like and you become the order taker, which I think is really it's an antithesis of what our work is all about. We're creatives, we're
Yeah.
strategists, we're researchers,
Yeah.
and they're the experts on the business, absolutely. And a lot of time they're also experts on their
And
customer
subject matter as well. Yeah.
subject matter. Yeah, it really depends on the
Yeah.
client, but there's all kinds of expertise there. But we're the people who serve their audience,
Yeah.
right? And we're the people who find the Venn diagram between, the business need and the audience need. It's like, how do you both get what you want? How do you both succeed by getting what you want?
Yeah.
And I think that it's when we have more of a relationship where, strategists and creatives are brought in to actually think
Yeah.
and to
I want
actually
to be a
be
thought leader.
to be
Right thing.
experts at what we do, um, and to be the people who diagnose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be people who
Yeah.
diagnose.
I like that you said that because, when I was doing a rebrand of my website recently, and when I was working on it, one of the ideas I was thinking about for how to describe us and our services was to talk about it as being content hospital.
Mhm. Yeah.
I didn't go with it mostly because I didn't want to confuse Google to think we were like a medical operation with all those keywords.
Sure.
But I've been meaning to like maybe write a blog post on this or something because it is true that we're kind of like doctors, right? With this kind of work. And one of the things we do is we are the first point of contact, kind of that first doctor who might be in the ER, might be just your primary physician who sits down with you, asks you, how are you feeling? What's hurting? What's wrong? When did this happen? Like asking the questions to figure out what the problem is, right? We're diagnosing. And then the next thing we do is we point them to a solution. So that might
Mhm.
be, I can prescribe you this medication and we can do this. Or I need to refer you to a specialist, right? Because you seem to be having this problem that you didn't know and you need to go to this kind of person for that. I can refer you to somebody or tell you what you should say to them. Or I need to send you into the operating room and we need to get you some surgery, like right
Right.
now. And the other part of it also is what doctors do is aftercare. If you've gotten a surgery or an invasive procedure and you've done this huge rebrand or a redesign, right? Or this big campaign that changed everything that you were doing, right? This big, big effort. You need to adjust. You have that period of almost recovery,
Yeah,
of like physical therapy, right? And of making sure that things are working and the work is not done.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think I think that's something that's very misunderstood about marketers and creatives is that that's a big part of what they do. It's not
Yeah.
just making the thing. It's
No.
it's really being a part of that discussion and diagnosing and understanding and coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
Um,
And then helping you like actually continue with the solution once you've done something, measuring those results, being able to adapt, being able to give further context and recommendations, right? Like our work is often not done once that thing is published. Not at all.
yeah. I mean, and I think that the difference between those two kinds of relationships lends itself to very different approaches to thought leadership.
Yeah.
Where if you have someone who's more of an order taker, you're more likely than not going to end up with content that really serves the business.
Yeah. And
And
that's not going to work that well.
it's not going to work that well, and it's kind of this cyclical, self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like you pay less for somebody who's an order taker. The quality is usually less because they're constrained by things they don't agree with. It doesn't perform as well.
Yeah.
You decide it doesn't work, so you don't do it anymore. And
No. And you decide it's not worth that much. So you pay less the next time.
it's
It's
true.
so bad.
And by contrast, when you work with somebody, when you actually partner with somebody and you say, this is what's going on in the business, how do we solve it with marketing? How do we solve it with thought leadership? And you figure out how to serve your audience and change their minds and motivate them and connect with them and help them,
Yeah.
then you kind of create a different cycle, where it's snowballing and it's building results over time and you're seeing that impact and you see that it is actually a high value thing. Um, and so it's just funny to me how the different kinds of relationships can correlate to different kinds of thought leadership, can
Oh, yeah.
correlate to different kinds of results.
For sure. For sure.
Well, what you were saying about Chris Do, I think,
Yeah.
was really wise also
Yeah.
because something that I think is really evident with him, a lesson I take from him every time I watch him, is that I don't know if he physically does this, but just psychologically, he leans back.
He does. He leans back. He really steps away. Like, that's what I've noticed. He's just like, here you are. You have a need. I could provide you a solution, but I'm not attached to the outcome here. Like, he
Yeah,
always feels like he's not trying to convince anybody because he doesn't need to.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
he is so confident in what he does that he
Yeah.
can be emotionally detached from that outcome and be curious about it. And I think that's such a powerful
Yeah.
thing, not only for us, but
Yeah.
for, thought leaders, for
Yeah.
brands to be
For
curious,
everybody.
to be emotionally detached, even though of course, the outcome, for our business is reliant upon it. Just being curious and seeing what people
Yeah.
actually want, what's going to connect with them.
A mnemonic to tie all of this together
Oh,
might be
please.
do what?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, I couldn't stop myself.
What would Doe do?
Do what?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that.
I'm so sorry.
No, no, we're never gonna apologize for something like that. We're never going to do that. That was perfect.
I hope to God he never, never, ever sees this.
I mean, the likelihood's good that he never will.
I know, good.
But I
Let's
think
not promote this too hard, okay? We don't want him to see it.
we're gonna keep this real low key. Um, but I think that's a perfect segue if people want to hear more isms like that, they can find you on your newsletter. They're gonna get a lot of this
Yeah.
kind of humor in it, right?
Oh, that newsletter. So yes, I write a newsletter. It's called ADMD, which stands for Attention Deficit Marketing Disorder. I have ADHD. I'm a very ADHD person. People can usually tell. So I decided to like brand my entire newsletter that way, especially because I can't keep a consistent publishing schedule no matter how much I try. And that newsletter has turned into something pretty interesting. I make people cry all the time. It's
With
a
how bad your
marketing.
jokes are, or
No, it's a marketing newsletter where I keep talking about things like grief and death
oh,
and loss and fear and insecurity. I'm constantly bringing up like very personal childhood stories. I had the last two talking about like apocalyptic thoughts. I had one that was marketing at the end of the world that was entirely about like, it feels like the world is ending. What do we do? Does our work even matter? And my latest one is on the death of the internet because,
mm,
Twitter is imploding, Reddit imploded, a lot is going on. So it's kind of like, okay, it seems like the internet is dying. How do we cope with that? The fact that the internet we knew is dying and a new one is starting and the transition's really hard and we are losing these connections, these places we valued. So if somebody wants to read a letter that will probably make them cry, that's the right place to go. People
if
seem
you
to
need to
really
just
like it though.
yeah, if you just need to get all your feelings out
Yeah,
and
I
think
always make people feel better at the end, I promise. I know it gets intense, but I always wrap it up. I think of it as therapy almost for people. We're going to really confront these things you don't want to think about, the things you're afraid to think about, and we're going to walk you through. And on the other end, you will feel better.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so you said the newsletter is admdnewsletter.com.
Yes, admdnewsletter.com. Or if you look up attention deficit marketing disorder, there's nothing else that's like that really.
No,
So it will come up.
I've never heard of anything like that. And I think that's
Yeah.
so relatable. There are a lot of people struggling with that. I think a lot of people are
Yeah.
getting diagnosed since the
Yeah.
pandemic. It's been a
So many
very
marketers have
eye-opening time.
ADHD. Like, it's kind of crazy. I would love to see a study on like the proportion of diagnosed ADHD marketers compared to other industries, because my guess is that it's higher because so many people have it. Like, very often when I bring it up, the other person's like, "Me too." Right? Who
I
knows?
think there's something about
Yeah.
the need to kind of switch tasks constantly that
Hmm.
probably attracts those people. I don't know. That's just my
Yeah,
armchair
and
theory about it.
definitely. I mean, we constantly switch between things. We chase ideas. When we're working on a project, we usually need to kind of hyper focus and really zone in and dive deep. And then we're on to the next thing, which appeals very much to an ADHD sentiment. I've also said that ADHD is kind of my marketing superpower because I aim for a reader that can't pay attention like I can't. So, like, if I can pay attention to your things, we're probably okay. But if I can't, and I'm being paid to pay attention to your things, we have a problem.
That's a great way of putting
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
newsletter and
Thank
sharing
you.
your time with us today. I think this was such a wonderful
Yeah.
conversation, and I'm definitely going to be signing up for your newsletter because
Thank
I
you.
love a good cry.
I'm so sorry. There are jokes in there too, but they're kind of interspersed with the crying. So, it's a whole thing. I'm gonna make you feel a lot of things. Have you seen Bo Burnham's Inside, the
Oh,
comedy special?
yeah.
You know how he makes you laugh and cry with that one? That's
Yeah.
kind of the vibe of my newsletter. I actually have a whole section in the latest one about Bo Burnham's Inside, so that's why it's on my mind. But it's a
Well,
similar feeling.
you definitely have my attention with that.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate anybody who's
Yeah,
making marketing more real. I think there's enough bravado and big
there is.
promises and shortcuts and hacks. I think it's nice to have somebody who's digging into the real stuff.
Yeah.
And, sometimes things have to be a little uncomfortable to be good.
They do. They do. That's the so what, right? Sometimes we do need to face the uncomfortable things. But thank
That's
you
right.
so much for having me, Ashley. This was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
It was a real
Yeah.
pleasure. Thanks to all you who joined us today. Make sure you
Yeah.
follow Mariya
Thank
on
you.
LinkedIn and on her newsletter.
Yeah.
Until next time.